All her life, the mystery of her father's murder has loomed over Kidist Forsyth. In 1993, Bulik Forsyth was a manager in the housing department of London's Lambeth Council. 3 months before she was born, he was bludgeoned to death and his flat set on fire. Now Sky News has seen evidence that he could have been about to expose an alleged paedophile ring operating within council premises.
There are some factors that point to him knowing something that was going on at work, and he was getting ready to blow the whistle.
This internal council report, obtained by Sky News, could be key. It details allegations of violent rapes conducted on council premises and the sexual abuse of children. It's here, at what is still the headquarters for Lambeth's housing department, that a paedophile ring operating within the council is alleged to have carried out sexual assaults. They used the basement, the report says, where they could rape victims without fear of being interrupted. And the report cites new witness evidence suggesting Bulik Forsyth may indeed have been killed as part of a cover-up. He tried to get away from the housing department, telling colleagues he had information which put him at risk.
It says there that he was willing to spill the beans, and he was scared that if he moved to another department that people in power could still get to him. So it seems that he was very fearful about something going on at work.
Is murder, and very nearly multiple murder. For whoever killed a local government official 4 months ago almost blew up a block of flats and all its residents. The dead man was Bulik Forsyth. Detectives hope tonight to find the motive.
A resident in Foster Court was disturbed by a commotion.
It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember looking at the clock. I heard running at the back of the flats quite heavy footsteps.
The gas failed to explode, and Bulik's neighbour woke up an hour later.
Is anyone in there?
Well, I don't know. Mr. Forsyth lives there. If he's in or not, I don't know.
Oh, there's someone in there. Get a move on.
Lock in here, Tom! Lock it out! We've got a body in here, Tom! There's a body in here, go!
One man found in back bedroom, apparently dead.
The fire had been started deliberately. The dead man was 42-year-old Bulik Forsyth, and he'd been murdered, beaten repeatedly and savagely around the head. Bulik was last seen alive leaving the council offices around 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February the 24th.
Every morning I hear the alarm of Mr. Forsyth's go off, because my bedroom is above his bedroom. But this morning I didn't hear the alarm. And then when I went out at 9 o'clock, I saw his curtains open. That was unusual, because mostly his curtains are drawn at that time in the morning.
Edna, have you seen Bulik this morning?
Is he expecting you?
Well, not really, but I'm a little bit worried. He's normally here by now.
While his colleagues were trying to contact him, Bulik's flat may have been having visitors. A local resident recalls,
I was going over the paper shop to buy a paper, and I saw 3 men was coming out of Foster Court round the front there. They was carrying some briefcase and some folders in their hands. Why I noticed them? Because they look official. I never saw them here before.
if you were one of those 3 men, the police would dearly like to hear from you. 4 hours later, just before 2 o'clock, the same resident who'd seen visitors at the front noticed something unusual at the back of Bulik's flats.
I saw a white car parked there in the corner with 2 men sitting in it, and they was gazing at me. They're well dressed, and one of them have black hair, the other one have a brownish hair. I live here for 18 years, and I never see a car parked there before.
Please call. I would like to know why he was murdered, and For my sake, my baby's sake and its family, we all want to know why.
Member of Parliament John Mann is a former Lambeth councillor.
There's been a huge cover-up. There are many victims. There are deaths and murders. It's about time the truth came out in terms of child abuse in Lambeth.
Now, it's never been played on television before, but it has a particular relevance. Let's listen to this.
So who else is on the goner list?
Oh, it's endless, believe me. I just want to make a film of it. On film, I'd like to kill Jimmy Savile. I think he's a hypocrite.
Weren't I right?
I bet he's into all kinds of seediness that we all know about, but we're not allowed to talk about. I know some rumours. I bet none of this will be allowed out.
I should imagine libelous stuff will be allowed out.
Nothing I said is libel.
Sounds a bit harsh, the death list there.
Well, but actually...
Sometimes you're contentious in life just because you're bored of that
But put aside put aside the rhetoric you were using. The fact that in 1978, at the height of the Sex Pistols explosion, there you are saying about Jimmy Savile, he was into all kinds of seediness that we all knew about. We weren't allowed to talk about it. I know some rumours. So you had heard the kind of thing that we now know about him, or stuff like that?
Yeah. I think most kids did too. Most kids wanted to go to the top of the pops, but we all knew what that cigar muncher was up to. But I'm very, very bitter that the likes of Savile and the rest of them were allowed to continue.
Did you ever try and do anything about Savile?
I did my bit. I said what I had to.
Did they air that? No. It just got suppressed.
Yeah.
For legal reasons.
Yeah. And
did you meet?
I found myself being banned from BBC Radio there for quite a while for my contentious behaviour.
Hello, welcome back. I'm pleased to say that our first programme of the new year has brought a really positive response to all the videos and reconstructions shown tonight. There's certainly something for the officers here to work on.
This is BBC One. Now the 9 o'clock news with Peter Sissons.
Good evening. A massive police hunt is underway tonight in West London for the killer of Jill Dando, who was murdered earlier today outside her terraced home in Fulham. Police said tonight she died from a single shot to the head. Neighbours who found her dying on her doorstep had heard a scream and seen a well-dressed man hurrying away down the street. The shocking loss of one of Britain's best-known personalities drew many tributes, among them from the Queen and the Prime Minister. Our chief news correspondent, Kate Adey, reports.
It's a quiet, pretty avenue in southwest London, where Jill Dando had lived for several years. Shortly before midday, some of her neighbours were alerted that something was wrong. Two women went towards the front door and saw someone lying on the doorstep. A third neighbour joined them.
I heard the scream.
You heard her scream?
I did hear a scream.
Did you hear a man's voice or anything like that?
No man's voice at all.
And did you hear a shot, or did you...
There was no shots. That's what I would say was a shot. I wouldn't have thought there was a shot, no.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to ensure that the Metropolitan Police secure the evidence, re-examine it, and investigate clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10.
If anyone in Westminster's halls of power might have been tempted to turn a blind eye, it would be Zac Goldsmith, a Conservative MP from an upper crust establishment background. But it was Goldsmith who led the charge for a full judicial inquiry into the allegations.
When I first was approached by people 5-6 years ago, and my initial instinct was to dismiss this stuff as madness, as conspiracy wackos, I know that many of the things that I would have been inclined to dismiss 5-6 years ago have since turned out to be true.
What sort of things were people saying to you when they rang your electorate office and told you that they'd been abused?
These were people who themselves had allegedly experienced very serious abuse, including rape. These were children they were children who were associated with a care home in my constituency, which was effectively mined by this paedophile ring, people taken to a guest house nearby, also in my constituency.
Part of your call was to investigate why, time and time again, allegations, very serious allegations of sexual abuse of children, were ignored. Is it a conspiracy or is it a stuff-up?
I would love to believe that it was a stuff-up, but there were just too many of them. Key evidence not being picked up, key trails not being followed, key questions not being answered, bungled police operations and investigations stopping suspiciously. And I don't believe that you can explain all of those as stuff-ups. I think there has to be an element of cover-up or conspiracy, call it what you want.
You've got this group of rich, powerful toffs who are basically raping, abusing and possibly even murdering poor, underprivileged young children.
These are people who are at the bottom of society's ladder, and therefore they had nowhere to go. And as a consequence of the abuse, their lives fell apart. So they became people whose evidence would never be credible in a court of law.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Detectives are investigating allegations that 3 young boys were murdered by a paedophile ring that included figures at the heart of the British establishment in the 1970s and 80s. The claims have been made by an alleged victim known only as Nick.
Nick described a childhood stolen by a group of men who raped and tortured him at smart London venues, including Dolphin Square. He said he watched them murder 3 boys. The story was broken by an investigative website called Exero. They'd been speaking to Nick for 5 months.
So Nick, just tell me a bit more about the nature of the politicians who sexually abused you and other boys at Dolphin Square.
Particularly nasty individuals. One was probably a lot worse than the other. One was a former cabinet minister, and the other was just a MP, but nasty, like to inflict pain, like to see us in pain.
Nick has been interviewed over a long period of time by experienced detectives from the Child Abuse Command, and he has also met an investigator from the Murder Command. They and I believe what Nick to be saying is credible and true. So yes, we do believe what Nick is saying.
John Wedger is a police whistleblower. As a CID officer, he discovered back coverings on child sex trafficking networks, which led to an investigative inquiry by the Independent Police Complaints Commission, delving into the depth of police involvement. He is one of the bravest men in the country today, by many people's reckoning. John Wedger, thank you for joining us. Please speak freely to this commission.
I'm recently retired from the Metropolitan Police, where I served as a detective. I specialised in child abuse investigations, and what is relevant to me being here today was my service whilst on the Specialist Vice Unit. I had been asked to look into an allegation made by a 14-year-old girl that she is being used as a prostitute. On looking into it, it appeared that this girl was one of many. She gave me another girl, who in turn gave me another, and it just spiraled. Very, very quickly, we had dozens of young kids aging from 9 to 14 years old. All of them were subject to care orders, either looked after or, in placements, homes or whatever, but all known to the social services. A lot of them were known to the police for being missing persons and everything else. And all of them were addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, and were all being pimped out, as the term goes, by one person, which was a female prostitute who was very well known to the Met Police. And this woman had alleged connections with high-ranked officers and also a local magistrate and someone that was high up in executive status in the BBC. This woman seemed to work with impunity for many, many years, and when looking into it, this actual racket had been going on for a long, long time. What I did was I exposed my findings. I committed them to paper in what was just a basic intelligence report. But I had been approached by a Scotland Yard detective who told me, he said, when you investigate any crime and you do well at it, you get praised. When you look into child abuse cases, the opposite happens. Be very careful. He then told me about a cabinet minister that they'd investigated on a few occasions, and on each occasion they'd been shut down. So I was aware that this had gone on. So I was expecting to be praised for what I found out. Each day a new child would be found, and it was just spiralling. I was brought before someone who is now a very, very high-ranked officer in the UK indeed. And he sat me down and he said, John, I've got to be very upfront with you. And I said, well, I'd like to be upfront with you, Governor, as well. And he said, you're out of all the officers I've got here, there was about, 40 officers. He said, you're the second best one I've got, which was a good accolade. He said, but unfortunately, you've dug too deep. What the hell have you done? Now, on a personal level, since the beginning of 2000, I'd brought up 4 children on my own, and this was common knowledge within my unit. And he said to me, if you ever disclose what you found out, you will lose your home, your children, and your job. You must shut the F up. And he said, you will be thrown to the wolves. You have no idea who and what you are dealing with. He said, I'm warning you now, you must back away. And then he said something quite strange. And he said that if you say a word of this, and even if you make a complaint, it will come back to me and it will go in the bin. I and no one else will ever betray fellow rank. Shut your mouth. So I walked away from that investigation, and I moved on. I was offered to stay, but I couldn't. What was very strange was that the main witness, the young girl that came forward, was found dead in the street very shortly afterwards on a suspicious drug overdose, which sort of compounded matters. One of them told me of a scenario when he was in a kid's home at the age of 4, was raped on his first night by a Catholic priest. He then went on to be raped daily and whipped and beaten. He became a drug addict, and he ended up as a rent boy on the street at an area of the West End where I used to work as a vice copper. And that was what was classed as the meat rack in Piccadilly Circus, where young boys were openly picked up for the purpose of prostitution. It was known about. He went to get in a car, and he was in trouble. He needed drugs, so he needed the money. And he had a pimp, and he said a pimp wasn't a bad thing. A pimp actually looked after me. I was safer with a pimp on the street than I was in a kid's home. He went to get into a car which was a white Rolls Royce with 2 men in it. And his pimp said, don't go in that car. The last 2 boys went in there. They killed them. We never saw them again. He gesticulated for the driver to drive around the block. And his pimp didn't see this. His pimp thought he'd walked away. But he didn't. He got in the car. He was then taken to a very affluent part of London called Hampstead. He was then subjected to 3 days of torture and sexual violence, in which he said that they knew that they'd killed him. And he said they dumped his lifeless body on Hampstead Heath by the Royal Free Hospital, believing he was dead. And he said, what shocked me more, John, was the fact that these two men, they were well dressed, they had a big house, and they were actually getting ready to go to their niece's wedding whilst they were dropping my lifeless body off, perceived lifeless body off, on a bit of heath ground. Yet it goes on consistently. I took the matter to the policing minister at the time, a member of the Privy Council and a member of the government's cabinet. He met with me and he was actually, to my surprise, appalled. He arranged for a meeting with the Home Office. The Home Office then got their independent investigation team involved and stated that there will be an independent investigation into my claims. And they deemed that the Met Police and the IPCC had failed and they will look into it. I was summoned to a meeting and it was a fully recorded meeting and it was witnessed, and in which the Cabinet Minister handed my paperwork over to the Home Office officials, and that was an official handover of the paperwork which I supplied to him. They then gave me their assurances that they will be in touch with me and give me a 24-hour contact number, and said they will investigate this independently. I never heard from them again. They have since denied receiving any paperwork. When pushed, they admitted they did receive it but have now lost it. We are seeing police failings in respect to child prostitution hemorrhaging in this country, but we are seeing them on a provincial level. We're seeing them in Rochdale, Blackpool, Rotherham. We're seeing them in Oxford, Aylesbury, Swindon, all on a provincial level. London is one of the largest urban conurbations in the Western world. It has got one of the biggest police forces. We haven't heard one thing about organised child prostitution in London, and the reason being is that those high up have been covering it up, and this goes right to the heart. I was met with, as I said, Lenny Harper. Children were killed at Haute de la Garenne, in which Lenny Harper had forensic evidence, which was then went missing. And he said to me, be careful, what you're looking at will go right to the heart of the establishment.
Tell me what happened in the forest. How many people were participating in these abusive ceremonies?
Yeah, there would be about 7 or 8 men each time. On occasion, there were police there.
Police?
Yeah, sometimes in uniform, but mainly not.
Did any of the children ever run away?
Yeah, I did. I tried.
What happened?
There was a police officer there, and he caught up with me and carried me back.